Mike's hot.
Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. And a fun show lined up for you today. I always say that. I always mean it. We got Gordy Chiesa stopping by for a full hour today, talk some hoop, some interesting things going on in the NBA as the trade deadline rapidly approaches. We have talked for weeks about how active the Utah Jazz are going to be on that front. We will have some more of that conversation today. We'll get into some Utah women's hoops with Tyson Ewing. Looking forward to that. We're just going to have a blast on the show today. All right, we're going to talk about the pre-draft process. The Senior Bowl practices are happening. Utah's representatives, Karene Reed and Junior Tafuna, are showing out according to all reports and the conversation down there. And it's an interesting time of year. The Pro Bowl games are this weekend. Utah Hockey Club was in action last night. They're in action again tomorrow. Big news on that front. And that's where we're going to start the show today as James Peterson, back in our Broadway studios, is producing for us. James, it's like sometimes my timing on this show is so incredibly bad because I think like an hour before the end of the show yesterday, we just had a 30-second conversation about a talk I had with a guy who's very familiar with brand building and the Utah Yeti, or what we thought was going to be the Utah Yeti branding on the hockey club. And there was the initial rejection. And I was told, these things happen all the time. You just have to kind of keep pushing through the end result. And then, of course, shortly after the show ended yesterday, it was revealed that actually Yeti is now out of the running. The Yeti Cooler brand has decided that they will not coexist with the Utah Hockey Club and not share names. Yeti or Yetis off the table now. So another vote is happening. It's an in-stadium vote. The next 4 games at Utah Hockey Club games, you're allowed to go in and take a peek at some of the branding ideas for alternative names. Utah Hockey Club being one of them, maintaining the current moniker of the club, which has been fun for this inaugural season. It's not something I want to see stick around, and it doesn't seem to be the most popular sentiment that could stay. The Utah Wasatch, which was interestingly not part of the original poll.
Yeah, they snuck that one in for this perhaps final vote. I guess there could be one more after this. There could be. They were kind of nondescript about that. Yeah.
And so, yeah, the Wasatch are, kind of shoehorned in there. And then Mammoth, which was, I think, either the second or third leading vote getter. I remember Outlaws and Mammoth and Black Diamonds and Yeti.
Blizzard,
those were all like
Blizzard seemed to be a somewhat popular
Blizzard
one, but that one probably has the same trademark issues with
the Dairy Queen, the Dairy Queen Blizzard.
So I'm sure that's why they're like, okay, we're just not even going to consider Blizzard.
Now you're down to these 3, and apparently the process is that you go to a game at the Delta Center and you have to check your phone in, kind of like when you go to a movie sneak preview. You're not allowed to bring your phone in, and you're allowed to go see these name and imaging ideas, and you're allowed to cast your vote based on that. So I don't know how long the club itself has known that Yeti was off the table, but long enough that they were able to build some graphics around a Mammoth proposition, around Wasatch, and around Utah Hockey Club as more of a permanent thing, which I would imagine they executed those uniforms and that look pretty well. So I would imagine that will stay pretty consistent if that's what they decide to do.
Do you think there's a disco ball involved for the club aspect? Utah Hockey Club.
Utah Hockey Club, and it's just a line of people standing outside in the cold in seasonally inappropriate attire.
Yeah,
like waiting to get into the Sundance.
You could be the bouncer mascot, OC.
Yeah.
Hey, I used to work at clubs.
to bygone era. I don't even know if that happens anymore. I've been out of the scene so long, but yeah, look, so that's kind of fun. The cloak and dagger situation of like, I was interacting with people on Twitter last night and got a photorealistic description, like I'm a sketch artist at the police station, of what the Mammoth logo looks like, which I love. And look,
you then drew it out, right?
I'm gonna go to one of the games. I think I'm gonna go to the Sunday game, and I'll have a chance to get my eyes on it myself, and I'm looking forward to that. Mammoth, Wasatch, or Utah Hockey Club. The poll question is going up at Real OC Sports, 877-353-0700. If you want to interact on this, look, you don't have a football game this weekend. You have the Pro Bowl games. Super Bowl is next weekend. It's a perfect day to talk a little Utah hockey to start the show. The most interesting thing about this, or one of the most interesting things about this, is also the press release that was thrown out there from the Smith Entertainment Group, making, I guess, reassurances that, like, hey, we really do want this to be a fan-sourced name. But two of the three names that are finalists, or seemingly finalists, were not chosen by the fans. We're not voted on by the fans. And there were skeptics in that process at the very beginning. But if this was really fan-centric, I don't know if Wasatch would even be there.
Yeah.
Wasatch is great for like a single A baseball affiliate.
Yes.
That is only ever going to have regional appeal, like in-town appeal.
Absolutely agree. Or minor league hockey, the minor leagues is perfect for that kind of a regional name.
Yeah, there's like, if you look at, and I love the branding that is done with minor league baseball, the hats and the t-shirts and all the stuff that you can get. Minor league baseball has really found their niche when it comes to merchandise, to gear, and to things like this, to branding, to naming. You go further down, like the AAA affiliates are generally something that is like, yes, there's regional appeal, but it also makes more sense on the broader scope. And then you go further down the line, you get down to like the single A affiliates, and it's like the Iowa corn farmers. You know what I mean? They go really, really, really granular.
Maybe beet diggers.
The Jordan High beet diggers, stuff like that. And it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect because what they're doing is they're trying to give a nod to the 30,000 fans that are actually going to bother to buy a ticket to those single A baseball games over the course of a season. And they all live within 100 miles of the stadium that they play in, right? You can't necessarily, I don't think you can do that with a Utah Hockey Club. I think that you have to be something that you don't have to explain to people. You don't have to have the NHL announcers on every television broadcast for the first 2 years. You don't want to have people saying, okay, this is the Utah Wasatch. They used to be the Utah Hockey Club. Now they are the Wasatch. What is the Wasatch? The Wasatch is a mountain range. And of course, the word Wasatch comes from the languages of indigenous people in Utah. And you got to go there's like 3 different layers. Yeah. You know what I mean?
What?
People don't know what a Wasatch is. People knew what a Yeti was, even though that wasn't my favorite idea for the team name. Everyone would know what an outlaw is. Black Diamonds would be a bit of a stretch, but you could get there. Mammoth, everyone knows what a mammoth is.
Absolutely. And with Wasatch, it's not like it'd be different if we were in Colorado and didn't already have Rockies baseball team, and you're like, I'm going to name it after the main mountain range, because people know the Rocky Mountains. People don't know the Wasatch Mountains unless you live in Utah, maybe Idaho, maybe Wyoming, right?
Plus, there's your Uinta Mountain loyalists. They're not going to like it. The Ochre Mountain loyalists.
It's true.
They're not going to be happy about it.
There's mountains on the west side too. Okay. Okay.
That's exactly right. All those people out in Tooele and Stansbury are going to be like, oh, great. So this team's not for us because we're Ochre Mountain people.
The Utah Ochres. See,
people be like, okay, is that a color? Is that ochre was the color that you got in the giant Crayola box in elementary school.
That's right.
Right? The spoiled kid that had like the 128 crayon box, and they had the ochre colored pens, and they had the evergreen colored crayons, not pens, the evergreen colored crayons, and they had like the Bahama teal, all these things. You're just like, what the? I didn't even know that color existed.
I just have red and blue and green.
Yeah. Yes.
The
rest of
like,
the rest of
gracious.
us, the rest of us had like the bare minimum requirement, the 8 basic colors: brown, black, red, blue, green, orange, purple. Good luck. Have fun, kid. And then you're supposed to create masterpiece art with that. Jeez, come on.
Can I borrow your you asked the kid with the 120 piece set. Can I borrow an orange? Can I borrow your orange? Okay, which orange? I got salmon, I got periwinkle.
Which orange would you like? I have salmon. I have burnt orange, if you're drawing a Texas Longhorn right now. I've got tangerine.
Yeah, would you like tangerine?
Yeah. And that box had the crayon sharpener built into it at the bottom.
Oh, yes. The crayon sharpener.
It's ridiculous. If you're a kid who grew up with that box of crayons, you probably have season tickets to the Utah Jazz and to the Utah Hockey Club right now.
This was a callback to months ago when you were saying what did you think was an indication of someone being rich?
Yes,
and
a sign of great wealth.
Not a sign of great wealth. Well, the 120 box of crayons with the sharpener when I was like 5. They must be.
That is,
if you have that, you must be loaded.
That's the first status symbol that all of us learned to recognize in elementary school. You didn't know what it meant when you were in kindergarten. You didn't know what it meant when somebody got dropped off in the parking lot in like a Porsche, because you were 5 and you don't know what a Porsche is.
That's a car.
But if that person came in with, in my day, that brand new pristine JanSport backpack, and they pulled out the 128 box of Crayolas, you're just like, oh, rich, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
You must live in that gated community in the neighborhood. Gotcha.
So ochre would not work for the Utah Hockey Club.
And Wasatch doesn't work either. Like early grievance, can we not sneak in Wasatch at the last second here?
This is very clearly, and unfortunately, fans now are too educated for you to pull it over on them, and for people to like actually think Wasatch is not going to get any votes. Wasatch is not a real candidate. I think what has happened here,
probably true. It's a ringer, right?
Yeah. What has very clearly happened here is that the team knows where it wants to go, knows what it wants to do, knows which of these branding opportunities they're really going to flesh out. They had to keep the Utah Hockey Club in there in order to make people think that that's in real consideration. And maybe it is. If ownership loves it, then they'll keep it like this. Mammoth is certainly something that would be great, that the fans, the first go around, indicated that they would enjoy, although it seems like at a slightly lower rate than Yeti. And Mammoth would be an acceptable alternative. This is, I think, a one-horse race with Utah Hockey Club being there. If the votes come back and the team and the club sees like, oh, people actually really like this Utah Hockey Club thing, maybe they would keep it. But you don't go through this entire process. They've already spent a lot of money on this, James. You don't go through this entire process with the intention of maintaining the brand as it is. The plan is going to be Mammoth moving forward, and I could not be more excited about it. I was campaigning hard for Mammoth when that first list came out. I wrote a big old article on the whole thing. People got mad at me for how negative I was about all the other names because I was trying to persuade people toward Mammoth. We know that, Columbian mammoth skeletons have been found in the state of Utah, so there actually is a regional relevance here. I think the governor, Spencer Cox, put out that picture of it's down in Fairview. There's a replica of that complete mammoth skeleton that was found down there in his hometown of Fairview. So in any case, it's going to be Mammoth. The branding opportunities are going to be incredible. Rest in peace to all of those Yeti dreams that people had. And there was some really good branding. I want to shout out all the creative individuals on social media. There was some like amateur graphic artists, and some of them, I guess, professional graphic artists that were doing the hobby version of their job and creating like mock-ups for Utah Yeti stuff. There was some really, really good stuff.
I'm pulling up your Twitter profile here. One from looks like yesterday with the Yeti walking through downtown. That's like a frozen tundra with the temple on one side and some of the other skyscrapers on the other side. That's awesome. Hockey is coming. Like, that's great.
Yeah, do a, I don't know, like do a poster of that anyway. Print it up. We'll hang it in the studio.
Yeah. We got to get this guy. We got to get whoever created that. I know it's Cole that posted it. I don't know if it was him that actually created it. We got to get them to send us a print of that, and we'll hang that up for sure. Do you want to take a call? We got a caller if you want it.
877-353-0700 if you want to call us on the Dish Pro text line.
It's our guy Tyson who's got some thoughts on the name.
Tyson, tell me what you think about this Utah Hockey Club branding situation. Go ahead.
It's getting kind of ridiculous, man. I think that the guy, Smith, ought to know that there's going to be copyrights on these kind of things. He's a bazillionaire business guy, you know. So, but what I was saying about the Mammoth is that is a ski resort in California. So I don't think that name's going to work either. And
Mammoth Mountain is a ski resort, so you might have to navigate some things there. And there also is a pro lacrosse, an indoor lacrosse. It's called Box Lacrosse. There's a franchise in Colorado called the Mammoth, which I think what happens in a situation like this is the big dog probably can mow over the little engine that could. But I think your point is well made.
Hold on, man. Well, and I was thinking, let's bring back the Golden Eagles. That was what we had here back in the IHL days. I know it's close to the Golden Knights, but who cares? Let's bring it back. Or else let's just stay Utah Hockey Club.
See, and this is where it gets really, like, to me, thank you for the phone call. The Golden Eagle thing, like, that ship sailed years ago. That ship sailed when the Grizzlies decided they didn't want to be the Golden Eagles. And I remember when I first moved to Utah, and my little sister, as Minnesota transplants, we were finding the nearest skating rink, and it was at the Cottonwood Heights Rec Center. And the Golden Eagles, that's where they practiced. They were on the ice, and I got all of them to sign my little notebook that I had, whatever. That would be a fun throwback night, alternate uniform night for the Utah Hockey Club. Do a Golden Eagles thing. But you can't do it because, like Tyson just said, the Golden Knights, the nearest geographical neighbor to you as an NHL team is also the Golden something. You can't also be the Golden anything. You could be the Copper something. Nod to the economy, the mining history.
Copper Mammoth.
The Copper Mammoth. I do like some of the Mammoth mock-ups that have incorporated copper into the color scheme. That blue and black and a little copper highlight. Ooh, that would look good, James.
It's nice. It's nice. I was more partial to Yetis over anything, but I honestly didn't love any of the options. But at first, I guess I was more partial to Yeti. But in the last few months, I've started to come around to Mammoth. I think Mammoth is overtaken Yeti for me personally. Even and that's great because Yetis is not going to be an option. So I'm on the Mammoth train right now.
I was very anti-Yeti at the beginning, and it kind of was. I was resigned to it. I thought that's what was going to happen, and this is where we're at. What I am afraid of is that at the end, that final statement that Tyson made, people just being like, let's just keep it Utah Hockey Club.
Yeah.
Because if there's not enough agreement, or if, the mock-ups that people see, and I'm not talking about us, the everyday fan, like if Ryan Smith and his wife is probably involved, and the higher-ups in the Smith Entertainment Group get all of the graphic designs and the uniforms mock-ups made, and they're like, you know what? This Mammoth thing doesn't look cool either. We don't like it. It's cumbersome. We can't find a logo that we like. We're not doing it. Or this lacrosse team puts up a big stink or whatever. They're just like, fine. We're just Utah Hockey Club. That is not a good outcome, in my opinion, because Utah Hockey Club was very clearly put in place as a placeholder. It was like, hey, we have done the impossible, and we have, in a 4-month span, we have brought a NHL team to the state of Utah. We're not going to call them the Coyotes. That was the Arizona thing. The owner there made sure that he got to retain those naming rights, so we can't use it anyway. We need something because we're going to play right away, guys. We're not going to try to rush together this whole Yeti process or a Mammoth process or an Outlaws process. So let's just call it Utah Hockey Club for now. But it was very much a for now, right? It's like when people bring their baby home from the hospital without naming it. It's an uneasy situation. You're like, oh my gosh, so cute. How big was he when he was born? Okay, wow, big baby. Wow, 8 pounds. That's a big baby. Amazing. And then what'd you decide on the name? And they're just like, we're still debating.
We want to get to know him.
It's an uneasy fit. We're calling him baby for now. Yeah. We're calling him junior at the moment. You're like, no, what? No. Give this thing a name. And I think that name is going to be Mammoth. And I'm going to be happy with that. I understand that some people won't be. But like Yeti was growing on me because I was resigned to it, Mammoth will grow on all of you. And even Utah Hockey Club has grown on me because they executed the sweaters really well. It looks good. James, what we need to do before the announcement is made is we need to get like the official stance of Lowry Markkinen and Will Hardy. I need Craig Smith. I need Kyle Whittingham. I need Kalani Sitake.
Yeah, all the sports, all the biggest sports names. Yeah.
I need Apollo Anton Ono. Okay, I need Derek Parra, who we saw not too long ago. I need every big sports name. Somebody call Steve Young. All right, I want to know what John Stockton thinks about this.
We'll ask Weddle.
Yeah, we'll ask Weddle.
We got Weddle on regularly. We'll ask Scott Mitchell and Eric Weddle. Those guys will be pretty easy for us to talk to. Yeah.
Yeah, I need I'm gonna reach out during the break. I'm gonna try and get an official vote from head coach in waiting Morgan Scally. See if I can get an official one from Kyle Whittingham on Mammoth, Wasatch, or Utah Hockey Club because we need to know.
And I've decided I'm going to the next Jazz home game, and I'm going to ask Will Hardy in the press conference.
Good.
In the pre or post game press conference, I'm going to say, okay, it's really important.
Those
Wasatch,
are our sports
Mammoth, or Utah Hockey Club.
Those are our sports community leaders. We need to know what they think about it.
Yeah.
All right.
We need Ryan Smith's official stance too. Hey, Ryan.
I said this months ago, but like the fact that Ryan Smith, after he spent billions of dollars on this project, is not just saying, guys, I wanted them to be called the Unicorns, so they're going to be called the Unicorns. And you're just going to deal with it. Like, that's what I would do. I think he's a nicer guy than I am because I would just be like, nope, they're going to be called the Fighting O'Connells. Good luck, everyone. And then people are like, what? People are like, what? What's that? There's not even a particularly large Irish contingent in this state. Why are they called that?
The Utah Smiths.
I mean, the sponsorship opportunities there are endless.
Yes.
If you call them the Utah Smiths.
And you could just say, sorry, we went to the highest bidder.
I would have loved.
Smith's Grocery
if they'd gone
$1
something
billion on this.
If they'd gone something really regional, like really super local, like that, but that everyone knows, right? Not something obscure like Wasatch that people are like, what? I don't know what that is. If they had gone Black Diamonds, I would have embraced that. If they would have gone something on the Mormon theme, and I totally understand why they can't, that would have been incredibly unique, and I would have loved that. You know, the Salt Lake Fighting Prophets or whatever you want to call it would have been great.
The Templars, maybe.
Templars would have been cool. But look, we're going to get one of these three. We're actually really going to get one of these two. Wasatch ain't it. It's not going to be the Wasatch, all right? If it's the Wasatch, I'm going to protest somehow. I'm going to cancel my tickets.
If it's the Wasatch, then that was the one Ryan Smith wanted all along.
That's
what
also,
you were talking about, because there's
correct.
no way that's getting more votes than Mammoth or
Ryan
Utah
Smith,
Hockey Club.
Can you imagine Ryan Smith being like, I want it to be the Wasatch, and then like it goes down as Wasatch. Everyone hates the name. 5 years later, he finally reveals why. Like, hey, why'd you call it the Wasatch? He's like, well, we had a family dog that was named Wasatch, and we decided we wanted to name the hockey team after the dog.
We called the name Satch for short, so we're gonna call the team nickname will be Satch.
But, okay. I do need to make one important point, though. No matter what the name of this team is, this squad is good enough, well-coached enough, talented enough that we need to grow out of something that we saw in the game last night. And I probably should have started this segment with this, but because this is the most important thing. Utah Hockey Club is as good or better than the Pittsburgh Penguins, okay? It's
record-wise much better.
Yes, Pittsburgh is a roster loaded with, aging Hall of Famers, but in today's NHL, this Utah Hockey Club team should make the playoffs more than the Pittsburgh Penguins should make the playoffs. You got a point last night. You're still, 6 points out from the final wild card spot in the West. But something really unfortunate happens when we are new to a scene in the state of Utah, or when we are kind of like insecure of our position in the state of Utah. And you saw this we've seen it for years with bad Utah Jazz teams. You saw it with the Pittsburgh Penguins coming in, and Utah Hockey Club is not a bad team. They're a developing team, but they're not a bad team. I saw way too much, James, of people being like, oh, that was actually really cool to see Sidney Crosby score a game-winning goal at the Delta Center. No, we have to grow out of that mentality.
Oh, it's cool. It's cool to see the other team's best player make us lose. Is that what you're saying?
I get it.
Goodness gracious.
Get it. You don't have a deep and sincere attachment to any Utah Hockey Club players, not yet anyway. But this is your team now, right? This is the gear that you're buying, that you're wearing, whether it's called Utah Hockey Club, whether it's called the Mammoth. Like, after this first inaugural season, after this first time that Sidney Crosby comes rolling through, you don't get to root for, oh, well, that was fun. That was cool to see a legend score a goal. That you can't have that mentality anymore. You can't be like, isn't it just neat for the Utah Utes to isn't it fun that we get to play USC now? Like, isn't it cool that we get to lose to teams that have legends? No. Isn't it fantastic that BYU now gets to play Kansas in basketball? Doesn't matter if we win or lose. No, that is a bad mentality. That is a little brother mentality. That is a loser mentality that you have to get rid of as a fan of this Utah Hockey Club. Is it a neat little thing that you get to see Sidney Crosby skate? Yes, of course. You get to be there in person to watch a legend. Is it a neat little thing that he scores the game-winning goal and beats your team? Nah, see, that's where the statute of limitations expires. That's when it becomes not neat. In the glory days of the Utah Jazz, nobody was sitting back going like, wasn't it fun to watch Michael Jordan hit that buzzer beater? Aren't we lucky that we got to be in the building for that?
Wasn't it great to see Shaq just destroy Greg Ostertag?
What a pleasure it is.
Completely embarrassed Greg Ostertag.
Isn't it so wonderful that Kobe Bryant had like an iconic 60-point performance against our Utah Jazz? Isn't that lovely? Guys, we have to get rid of that mentality. I understand why it exists. I understand why those tweets are sent out and why people without like real investment in hockey as of yet are just like, oh, well, that's cool. That's a name that I've known for 20 years. And so to see that person, who I have some mental picture of, actually in person, and to see that person do something remarkable, that's fun. Okay. I understand why it happens, but it's something we have to reject. This team is our team now. Utah Hockey Club is not an event for you to go to and have fun and just be like, oh, we're out here for the entertainment purposes, like going to a Bees game. Let's be honest. The outcome of Bees games is not why you go to a Bees game. The outcome of these Utah Hockey Club games is important. This is a team on the cusp of doing some really good things. This year, you all get a pass. But let's start growing out of that mentality, and we got to start growing out of it right now. Because beginning next year, the expectation is you got to make the playoffs. Beyond that, you're definitely making the playoffs. You're trying to win a playoff series and hopefully chasing a cup within 5 years. I got really bothered when I saw how many people, after the healthy debate about what name of the final three you're going to settle on, people be like, oh, yes, and by the way, how fortunate am I to have been in the building when Sidney Crosby, who's getting a little long in the tooth, beat my team? No. Reject that mentality. Get rid of it. Sean O'Connell Show today and every day brought to you by Les Schwab Tires. They've got the wheels, the tires, the accessories for whatever it is you drive. Stop by your local Les Schwab today. Professionals there will get the job done right the first time. Before we take a break, I do need to make a final point about the merchandise, the gear, the branding. First of all, snatch up all the Utah Hockey Club gear that you can, because there's a chance it's only available for another 6 months or so. And when the time comes and they roll out the new stuff, I know I'm going to want a wooden grail hat with a mammoth on it, or even with a Wasatch on it, if that's what it ends up being. Certainly, if they get the licensing deal done for the Utah Hockey Club. Wooden Grail is a local Utah company, high-quality materials, great attention to detail, and the best hats out there on the market, period. woodandgrail.com. Buy a gift certificate, sign up for the newsletter, get the exclusive discounts, find out when all the drops are happening. woodandgrail.com. Tell them that OC sent you. Grab the suede. I'm partial to the suede material. And very soon, you're going to have a deal with Wooden Grail and whatever that final decision is on the Utah Hockey Club's name. Can't wait for that to happen. Take a break. Gordy Chiesa is going to join us to talk some hoop next. Are the Golden State Warriors back-ish? We'll get there. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
OC Gordy is ready.
Time to talk a little hoop here on ESPN 792 on FM. Sean O'Connell Show continues with our resident NBA expert and my friend, Gordy Chiesa. Gordy, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing fine, OC. Thank you.
Gordy, Wasatch, Mammoth, or Utah Hockey Club? You get to cast a vote like the rest of us. What do you prefer? Because Yeti is off the table.
Yeah, Mammoth. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I like that name. What do you think?
Yeah, that's the one I liked the best in the first place, so I feel happy about it. But I do mourn for the folks that had invested their emotions in Yeti, and I wish that corporate messes didn't take things away from a fan base. I believe in democracy, so if Yeti was going to win based on the votes, and it looked like it was, I would embrace Yeti eventually. But unfortunately, the bulk of the fans don't get what they want. I think Mammoth is going to be great. I think it's going to grow on people. I have my fingers crossed that that's what we end up with, is the Utah Mammoth.
Oh, very much. Add to that. So the fans, they can relate to the name. That's why it's so connectivity. So, for example, I'm asking this question, Sean, for decades. Why in Salt Lake City is the NBA team called the Jazz? Why? And quickly, the reason why is because they moved from New Orleans back in 1979-80, the first year here in Salt Lake City. It was known as expansion team, the New Orleans Jazz. So thus the Jazz came to Salt Lake City. They didn't change the name. But the mother of all names by far is when the Lakers from Minneapolis back in 1960 moved to a place called, what's it called, L.A.? This place was Sunshine, L.A., and the Lakers kept the Minneapolis name Lakers, meaning what? The land of 10,000 lakes, even though there's very few lakes in L.A. It's, by the way, the Pacific Ocean.
That was before my time, Gordy. How much sincere conversation was there either in L.A. or in Salt Lake City, like, hey, we should change this name and we should make it something that appeals more to the locals?
It really wasn't. It's hard to believe, but at that time, the marketing was so almost like primitive. So the consensus was they just assumed because the team moved, keep the same name. And so the one exception was back in the late 70s when the Buffalo Braves moved to this place called San Diego, and it became the Clippers because of what? The ocean there in San Diego and the Clippers. So that was the one exception in the late 70s. So you imagine working for the Buffalo Braves and your boss said to you, we're relocating. I don't want to go. Well, we're going to San Diego. I'll go.
Yeah, exactly. You're not gonna have snowstorms with 7 feet of powder in your front lawn ever. Okay.
Correct.
All right. I'll go be a Clipper. Yeah, that's so fascinating how different the sports branding world is now, that it wasn't even much of a thought to, because LA Lakers, what does a lake have to do with Los Angeles? Jazz is almost comically opposite of the culture, especially at that time in Salt Lake City, Utah. And now it's funny because I think this is the encouraging thing for folks who maybe don't love the Mammoth idea or the Utah Hockey Club idea or whatever it ends up being. It's going to grow on you. If I ran a vote to, do you want to change the Utah Jazz name now? Nobody wants to change it now. It's become part of the community. It's become synonymous with this community now, even though the music style never was and probably never will be. If we tried to change the name now, nobody would want it. So it grows on you eventually.
That's correct. Absolutely. Again, there's connectivity, and it's generational. So whether you're aged 80 years old, whether you're 8 years old, in Salt Lake City, the Jazz are our team. Don't mess with our team. That's what we believe in. So that's the local part of it, and that's the beauty of it. Whether it's Salt Lake City, whether it's New York, whether it's Boston, whether it's L.A., fill the blanks in. And the ultimate will be also shown in football, the Green Bay Packers. Like that's owned literally by most of the citizens, by shares into the team with one majority owner. But so the fans really are engaged that this is our team, the Green Bay Packers.
All right, let's talk a little NBA here. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 52 points last night. In the first quarter, he outscored the Golden State Warriors by himself, and yet OKC ends up losing that game. Does that tell us anything about Golden State and their resurgence? They were expected to, have some tough decisions and some tough conversations with the trade deadline approaching. Does this change anything for Golden State?
No, it doesn't. However, it shows that the Warriors have heart, and that's the thing about it. Yeah, that 116-109 a win last night against the best team in basketball, the Thunder, but it's how they did it. Is that Wiggins had a tremendous game. And that was 27 points, and that was a huge factor. And remember, they're playing without Draymond Green, but also without Kuminga. And then Kevon Looney off the bench, who we all respect. He's a big guy that can rebound. He's good in pick-and-roll coverage, and he hustles. He gets 18 points and 4 blocks, and that was a huge factor in the game. Now, we left out the main guy, the big dog of all of them, Steph Curry. He had a quiet 21 and 4 assists. And so the Warriors still have a pulse right now. Their dilemma is going to be, the biggest factor is all, for the fans to understand, is this thing called the first apron and the second apron. And the Warriors are over the second apron, and they're paying luxury tax to the other owners/teams that are not paying luxury tax. And so the question is always this, how much are you willing to pay? And do you make that trade? Are you guaranteed that that player you have, for the Warriors' point of view, Sean, can you get us to the minimum past the first round? And these are all discussions, and there's no really true answer until April 20-something, May something, or in the NBA Finals in early June. It's a tough decision for every team.
Gordy Chase is our guest here talking NBA basketball. We'll get to the Jazz and Timberwolves matchup here. We've got Gordy for an entire hour, so we'll get there, I promise. But some big picture stuff. The NBA has been pondering expansion. There's been talk about Seattle getting a franchise, Las Vegas getting a franchise, other cities throwing their names in the hat. And now the NBA is reportedly in serious consideration to start a new basketball league in Europe, maybe integrating the Middle East as well. We know that this is truly a global game, and some of that, the European scene especially, is outside of their direct control. NBA Europe, NBA Middle East. What do you know about this? What do you think about this?
It will happen within the next 10 years. As the game grows globally, and now with our TV partners. So now with Amazon Video getting involved, again, it's as big as Disney is, meaning ABC, ESPN. Now TNT is going to be out. NBC bought in now. So there's an absolutely global reach, to say the least, and that it's going to happen. Now the big part will be the players' union, that they've got to okay this, because now suddenly, whether it's truly an NBA league over there or those teams that play, we'll say in Turkey or in London, in Paris, in Frankfurt, are they just a different part of? They're part of the NBA, but not truly part of. They're part of the contract, but not part of the NBA. And so they've got to figure out what do they want to do with those teams. But in the beginning, and also a thing called FIBA. FIBA will be involved. If you're FIBA, you are no part of the NBA. You like the NBA as far as friendly competition, but these are our teams. So we shall see how it all plays out. No one knows the answer. Right now, they're just talking about it, that it possibly could happen. But it will take a long, long time to work it out, because the TV contracts are in place right now for the next 7 years before they can renegotiate.
Add to the list of sports that the Middle East is trying to get involved in. Obviously, they've bought into racing, they bought into golf, they bought into European soccer. Now Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, all these places trying to get involved in basketball as well. And is it because of regional interest? Look, I've been over there a bunch of times. It's not because of that. It's because the business folks, the business-minded, the big money individuals over there, and there's a lot of them, recognize what the American sports scene is in terms of investment. Gordy, you've seen this, you know this way better than I do. What franchises used to cost and the value they used to have compared to where they're at now in the NBA, in the WNBA even, all over the place. This is like, if you have enough money to get into this game, it's a no-brainer that you want to get into this game, because sports franchises go 10x, 50x, 100x in some cases on your initial investment.
That is correct. That's an understatement. So we're talking billions of dollars as far as the value. So the Celts right now, the world champion, their ownership group is the last 8 months or so are trying to sell their team. So the Celts, a storied franchise, Forbes is saying that it's worth basically $6 billion. So just to buy that. Now, an expansion fee, you mentioned before about Seattle and Las Vegas. Just for the privilege to buy into the NBA, just for the expansion fee, which goes to the other owners of the NBA to be part eventually, the TV package will cost roughly between $900,000 to $1 billion just for the privilege to get in. That's not including what it costs to buy the team and the operational costs. So just generally speaking, if one of those countries, the Saudis, bought an NBA team, just for the narrative, is that they're talking $10 billion basically to start it. And who has that kind of money? Minus, again, foreign entities might have that money and are willing to do it because they want to get their global reach. It's all based on global reach as far as whatever their companies are. And obviously, the biggest factor of all, as always, is oil. Oil is number one in the whole world as far as how people perceive things, and now also with AI.
Yeah, you got AI, you got the big tech billionaires. I mean, look, the most famous billionaires in the United States, the people who have this kind of money, a lot of them are involved in tech. But Steve Ballmer bought a franchise. I don't know if anyone else in that world. I don't know if Elon Musk wants one. I don't know if Mark Zuckerberg wants one. I don't know if the Oracle guy wants more franchises. But I mean, those are the people who can actually play in this space now. It is really insane, the level of investment it takes. And Gordy just laid it out for you. The expansion cost could be up to $10 billion for an NBA franchise. That is wild. We'll take a break here. We got lots left to discuss with Gordy Chiesa. The trade deadline is approaching rapidly. I want to pick Gordy's brain about some significant trades in Utah Jazz history. And, of course, we'll look at where they might go before February 6th. We're off to a good start here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Do not go anywhere, as I remind you that our cash kickoff continues, 508-777-1000 for your chance to win $1,000. Text the word SPREE, that's SPREE, to 508-777-1000 for your shot to win $1,000 to help pay the bills. That's 508-777-1000. Text the word SPREE, SPREE. Sean O'Connell Show continues on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show continues here on a Thursday. Craig Smith Coaches Show is tonight, live at 6, Slackwater, Salt Lake City, 684 South, 500 West. And I want to remind you about your chance to see a Running Utes home game. Text the word Utes to 33986 for a chance to win a pair of tickets. Next home game for your Running Utes, Wednesday against the Colorado Buffaloes. Tickets are also available at utahtickets.com. We got Gordy Chiesa, our NBA expert, with us today, and we'll get to some big trades in Utah Jazz history as the deadline approaches, and the Jazz may or may not be players there. But before we get there, James Peterson has a leaderboard update from the PGA this weekend.
Yeah, PGA Tour leaderboard update brought to you by Uinta Golf. The new Titleist Pro V1 and Pro V1X brings you more speed and control than ever before, now available at Uinta Golf Shops by Worldwide Golf. They're at Pebble Beach, OC, this weekend. They just got started today. Eric Von Ruin is your leader so far at 4 under through 5 holes. Colin Morikawa is tied for second with the likes of Rory McIlroy and others at 3 under early on. How's Tony Finau doing? He is even so far through the first couple of holes, so he's keeping pace there, not too far behind the leader there. But there's your PGA Tour leaderboard update. Pebble Beach Open, again, brought to you by Uinta Golf and the new Titleist Pro V1 and Pro V1X.
Thank you, James. All right, Gordy Chiesa, the trade deadline approaching in the NBA, and just to put into context, right? I mean, there are a lot of people who've gone a little disenfranchised about the Jazz being like, all right, you're going to make a trade, but how impactful is it going to be? Give me your favorite or your most impactful trade in Utah Jazz history that you could think of or that you were a part of.
Back in February 24th, 1994. So, Sean, over almost 31 years ago, the Jazz were winning 50 games all the time. But at that time, the Jazz, it's hard to believe, never had a winning road record. So the Jazz were dominant at home. We're talking 38-3, 37-4, etc. But not a winning road record. That day, the Jazz traded Jeff Malone and a future first-round pick for the 76ers for a guy named Jeff Hornacek and Sean Green. And then Jeff Hornacek became the absolutely missing piece of the Jazz quest to be a world champion. He became that incredible scoring option and resonant as far as a ball handler that played in lockstep with John Stockton and Karl Malone. So that was the most impactful trade in Jazz history. So think about it, Jeff Malone and a future first-round pick for Jeff Hornacek and Sean Green. The second impactful pick was recently back on September 1st, 2022. That's when the Jazz traded Donovan Mitchell, who was an all-star, for Larry Markkinen, Colin Sexton, Ochai Agbaji, 3 unprotected first-round picks, and 2 pick swaps. And that moved on Donovan Mitchell to Cleveland. Cleveland is now in first place in the NBA. And then the Jazz have Larry Markkinen, who's an all-star. So let's hope they keep him. And that the other guys, and Sexton's a very good player, but they moved on from Donovan Mitchell. The third one, quickly. This is also a tremendous move by Dennis Lindsey. On Christmas Eve, I remember this, back in 2019, the Jazz traded Dante Exum and 2 future second-round picks to Cleveland in exchange for Jordan Clarkson. And Clarkson, 2 years later, became the 6th man of the year. And here's the last one. Back in 1979, the Jazz traded Spencer Haywood to the Lakers for Adrian Dantley, who became a 6-time All-Star. And Adrian was inducted in the Basketball Hall of Fame. So, yes, it does matter that you get the right trade for your franchise. It's really a defining moment if that player can help you, especially in the playoffs, go deep in it and or be world champions.
So there's been some pretty significant movement for the Jazz in the past. Will there be in the short-term future? We're going to find out in just the next few days, and we'll be talking about it a lot right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right, in the interest of staying on clock, I am going to take another break here. We still have Gordy's list to get to. We'll talk a little bit more about the Jazz-Timberwolves matchup, as that's what's next for Will Hardy and his crew. Don't go anywhere. Stick around on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
All right, thanks, OC.
Thursday edition of the Sean O'Connell Show continues. Gordy Chiesa, our resident NBA, is around to talk a little more hoop. Gordy, we've seen this Utah Jazz team now put together a successful string of 7 losses, which is a weird thing to say. A successful string of 7 losses. Knowing that you're trying to get a high lottery pick has been a theme of all the conversations that you and I have had this year for the Utah Jazz. And, now it's a Golden State loss and then a Timberwolves matchup. What are you looking for with this Utah Jazz team against the Minnesota Timberwolves?
Well, the T-Wolves right now, they're an interesting group where they thought it was going to be easy, Sean, as far as last year they went to the conference finals and they lost to the Dallas Mavericks. So most of the teams returned, but they made that trade for Julius Randle, for Karl Anthony Towns, and Dante DiVincenzo. And so they play well defensively still, but they're really offensively as far as challenge. So what the matchup tonight's going to be as far as with the Jazz is can they really keep the T-Wolves out of the open floor? Because in Anthony Edwards, they have one of the best young talents in the NBA. He has played sensational. He's averaging 26.3 points per game, 41.9 from threes, and he's made the 3rd most threes in the NBA, only behind Steph Curry and LaMelo Ball. And so we think about Anthony Edwards. You think he's a dunker slasher, which he is. However, he's really improved his 3-point shooting. All right, Julius Randle, that big trade. He's an effective scorer, but he turns the ball over too much. So the one thing that's different between this year and last year with the T-Wolves is that they turn the ball over much more. They committed over 15 turnovers per game, which puts them in the bottom of 4th in the NBA. So the matchup tonight's going to be, can the Jazz defense in transition slow them down, and can they cause enough havoc to really get after the T-Wolves to create opportunities for themselves to score off their defense. So it should be very interesting. Mike Conley, former Jazz man, age 37, has struggled the whole season. His 18th season in the NBA, and it's been a concern for them. DiVincenzo's out right now with an injury, with a non-surgery injury in his left big toe. So Conley was starting, then he off the bench, and now he's back to starting right now. So the whole team basically for the Jazz in tonight's matchup is right now, they've got to play much harder than the T-Wolves to try to get a win.
You mentioned Anthony Edwards. Where do you have him in terms of elite players in the NBA? Is he a top 10 player? Is he a top 20 player? Is he a top 5 player right now?
Yeah, he's in the top 10. Yeah, absolutely. In the top 10. So the first 5 should be Shai Alexander, Luka Doncic. He's hurt right now, but he should be in the top 5. Giannis, Jason Tatum, and Nikola Jokic. In the second, he's in the second tier, meaning 5 through 10 should be Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Anthony Edwards in that group. Jalen Brunson should be in that group, and LeBron James in that group. So I have him in the top 10 players in the NBA.
Still at age 40, LeBron, hanging out. It's unbelievable.
Oh, no, unbelievable. Hanging out. He's played great for them. The Lakers. Anthony Davis got hurt the other night against the Philly 76ers with abdominal strain. And so the Lakers up to that point really have played relatively well recently. And so in their world, they think they're going to make the playoffs without the play-in tournament. When you're a veteran team, Sean, you don't want to play in the play-in tournament. You want to make the playoffs 1 through 6, have a chance to rest that extra 2-3 days in April, and they'll be ready for their first round with full legs under you for the knockout punch.
Okay, stay focused on Anthony Edwards here for just 1 second, because I thought you were going to tell me he was a top 10 player. And when you're a young team like the Utah Jazz, who have a lot of developing to do, I imagine there are different coaching points when you're going up against one of these elite talents, when you're going up against the guy. And he's obviously different than like a Victor Wembanyama. He's 6'4". He's a perimeter player who's got the ability to drive to the hoop, et cetera, et cetera. So what is the emphasis? What is the coaching point for your young team when you're going against the guy who's already emerged as a top 5, top 10 talent in the league?
Well, he's turnover prone, so what you want to do is try to give him different looks. Where sometimes you press up in the coverage, where you try to body him and then give a cushion defense. Other times you would soft trap him to make him pass the ball out of the double team and then deny the ball back to him. So just give him different looks. Those don't play him the exact same way all the time because his talent level and his ball skills will take over as far as him penetrating or shooting over the top with that three-point range. He's a major talent. Just generally speaking, when a guy with that athletic gifts goes airborne, he's almost impossible to challenge. So what you want to do is try to get him before he goes up in the air and take the ball out of his hands some of the time, or challenge his jump shot to make him shoot over your contested paw. He's a talent, and that's in jazz basketball. That's what they're trying to acquire to get. Let's not forget, Anthony Edwards was the first pick of the draft back in 2020. And so this is the byproduct of getting high draft picks for the T-Wolves. He's a franchise-type player.
Gordy Chiesa, our resident NBA expert on the show here, talking Utah Jazz hoop. They're on a 7-game losing streak. They are up against the Minnesota Timberwolves, who is when we look at a model franchise for the Utah Jazz to follow, right? A lot of times it's okay, do what San Antonio has done. You're looking at the success that Milwaukee had in winning a finals. That's a small market, a quote-unquote small market team. You already highlighted Minnesota's struggles in maintaining dominance after a trip to the conference finals. Are they closer to a model franchise that you want to follow their method, or more of a cautionary tale about like, hey, they have done it wrong?
Cautionary. Yeah, very much. Where they have some young talent, absolutely. However, is that the pieces sometimes don't fit. So, for example, with Rudy Gobert, former Jazz man, he's a highly paid player, but he's one-dimensional. Now, what he does well is exceptional, meaning what? Rebound and block shots. But what happens, Sean, the last year or so, with players and teams know that he's only averaging 1.5 blocks per game because they don't challenge him as much. So now it's more when the rivals penetrate, they take that pull-up jump shot. So it negates some of his ability to change the game as far as up at the rim level. The competition is adjusting to what he does. Now the flip side, and getting paid so much money, over $40 million, you need more. And then Mike Conley, again, former Jazz man, everybody liked him, but age 37, 18th season, there's a lot of wear and tear in those legs. And so what you want to try to do is balance your roster with young talent, youthfulness, but also not one-dimensional veterans or aging veterans, especially as a starter. So Mike Conley is better off the bench right now, but now because of the injury to DiVincenzo, he's starting. They're getting exposed to that position.
Going up against a Rudy Gobert, who obviously this franchise knows very well, different bodies, different minds, different faces going up against this version of Rudy. And but you know what he's good at. You more than anyone else probably know what Rudy is good at. So given the fact that teams are not challenging him the same way as they used to, how do you attack Rudy Gobert and that very specialized skill set?
Well, get him in pick and roll defense. In other words, make him move his feet. So with a shot blocker, you don't let him play vertically. You make him play horizontally by moving his feet. And so whoever Rudy is guarding in a pick and roll, whether it's set defense or they're scrambling mode, is that get him involved in it. Where usually speaking, most big guys, without getting so technical, they play center field in the coverage where they're back off the screen, and they're playing support defense. That gives the dribbler a strike bounce where he can penetrate, shoot over the top, or go downhill or shoot the mid-range game. And so that's how you attack Rudy Gobert. Bring him outside, away from his is a natural habitat in the lane and make him move his feet versus move his arms as far as verticality.
All right, moving on from the Jazz-Timberwolves matchup to some general NBA stuff. I'm knocking on wood as I say this because I want this Utah Jazz franchise to have good luck, good fortune with health moving forward. But this week, the conversation around Joel Embiid and how much time he misses has gone a little bit more viral, I should say, because of graphics that were put out there on a broadcast that compared how many games he's played versus how many games he's missed. And then the internet took over and altered the graphic to make it look like the ratio was even worse than it is. But it's bad. I mean, he's missed almost as much as he's played over the course of his NBA career. For you and for guys who've been around the game for so long, when do you kind of pull the plug and say that's an injury-prone player, you can't plan around him, you can't build around him? It's nice when he's there, when he's healthy, but you can't invest in him like he's a franchise-building block because he's too injury-prone. When do you come to that decision?
When he can't score the ball anymore. So what he does, he gives them a unbelievable scoring, whether inside or outside. Now, as far as he's 30 years old right now. He'll be 31 on March 16th. And so there's a lot of wear and tear on that body as far as injury prone. And so I would keep him. I would still keep him because with Therese Maxey, they have a 1-2 punch right now. What happened with the 76ers, Embiid is he's the guy where everyone's blaming when they don't win. Also, Paul George has been out of the lineup also recently too. And they're an aging group. And so their bench is really below substandard. And they're all in as far as trying to advance. And they don't have enough firepower to do that. So last year in the playoffs, in the play-in tournament, they beat the Heat, and they got punched in the face by the Knicks 4-2. Now, Embiid is the poster child of that. Joel Embiid right now is 0-3 in Game 7s in the playoffs. And that's how you're a star player. That's how you're judged. I would keep him, though, because he can score the ball. His contract is way, way high, but it's hard to replace him. So I'd hold on to him for a year or so and see how it plays out when they revamp their roster.
All right, another big picture question. When you joined me on the Tuesday show, I asked you about some news that had broken. Isaiah Thomas was trying to make another run at an NBA stint, and he was going through the Utah Jazz, the Utah Stars specifically, to try and get to those stay-ready games and prove to franchises again as the playoffs approach that he's worth, adding some depth, whatever. He played his first game in a Stars uniform, Gordy, and looks like the guy knows how to ball, at least at that G League level.
Yeah, very much. I had the pleasure to be there, and what fun! Yeah, Isaiah Thomas, age 35, but his best part. Oh, by the way, he's only 5'9", so Joe Q Public can relate to him as far as a guy that's average size, but he's got a big heart, and so he drops 40 points in that game against the Arizona G League team, and he has 8 assists. And unfortunately, his team lost 122 to 115 in that game. I call Isaiah Thomas. He's a wiggle scorer. He's a moxie driver, and that he's wired to get buckets. So in a playoff situation, he could be a backup point guard in a playoff game 3 months from now and help a team win the second quarter. And so this is why this be the G League, Sean, where I call moving parts the G League, where there's young guys that are trying to get playing time because it's so critical that they're able to perform live in the game instead of only practices. And for some of the veterans that have bounced around either in Europe or of injuries, and they're still on the NBA radar, but most of the personnel people have not seen them play. So by going to the G League for Isaiah Thomas, all the scouts last night were there, saw him play, and they were thoroughly impressed. So he should be signed with somebody within the next, hopefully, in his world, 1 to 3 weeks to get to that team and help them, hopefully, in their world, get to the playoffs. As
long as we're talking about G League players, Bronny James was in the conversation this week. J.J. Redick mentioned that maybe he wasn't setting up the young man for ultimate success and took the onus on himself and said, maybe put him in a bad position, which is really interesting because most of the time you don't hear an NBA head coach talk about the G League players forthright. Most of the time they're not the son of one of the all-time best players in the history of the NBA. Are the Lakers managing the Bronny situation correctly? Not just his minutes and not just how they bounce him back and forth, but also how much attention is paid to Bronny, even at the organizational level.
Yeah, very much. So if I was counseling him objectively, I'd have him in the G League the whole year where he could settle down and play through his mistakes. And so remember, he's only 20 years old. So like any other 20-year-old player, minus being an unbelievable knockout generational talent, would be in the G League playing. Because in other words, he should be a college sophomore at USC if he stayed in school. So now he's playing in the NBA against absolutely grown men like his dad that are really much bigger, stronger, and faster than he is right now. So what happened? Because LA does drama very well, to say the least, and there's so much hype about him playing with LeBron, and they got caught up in it, either network television, meaning what, ESPN or TNT, plus the Lakers themselves, and it's probably somewhat disservice. So he's a scoring point guard like anybody else. He's mistake-driven because of decision making, but he does have talent, not LeBron talent, but he can play in the NBA. I would just have a slower growth pace to him right now. Get him in the G League and be a starting point guard there and play with his mistakes.
All right, Gordy, what's your list today?
My list today, tonight's game, the Jazz play the T-Wolves, as you mentioned before. I've been thinking about our former colleague, Jazz player that the fans love, Joe Ingles. So thus, this is my list today. The players from Australia currently in the NBA. Now, sure, I know also you're a big Australian guy. So I know that you know a lot of these guys and also you know where they're from, some of these players. Here we go. There's 15 players from Australia in the NBA. I'll go through it quickly. From the Dallas Mavericks, Dante Exum, former Jazz man. He was the fifth pick of the draft in the Jazz back in 2014. He played 215 games in a Jazz uniform. Kyrie Irving was born in Melbourne. His father played in Australia. He has dual citizenship. From the Rockets, Jock Landale and Jack McVeigh. From the Trailblazers, Matisse Thybulle and Diop Reese. From the Hawks, Dyson Daniels. From the Thunder, Alex Dukas. From the Pacers, Johnny Furphy. From the Bulls, Josh Giddey. From the Nets, Ben Simmons. From the Cavaliers, Luke Travis. From the Hornets, Josh Green. From the T-Wolves, as I mentioned, Joe Ingles, the Aussie with the swag. He's the all-time leading Jazz franchise three-point shooter with 1,071. Yes, he's age 37. And Sean, he's only played for the T-Wolves only 9 games this year. So he's an insurance policy in case someone gets dramatically hurt. But right now, all the Jazz fans, we all really enjoy Joe Ingles in a uniform. And the last player on the list from Australia is the Jazz own player is Patty Mills. He's the pride of St. Mary's College. Quickly, let's not forget that former Utes All-American standout Andrew Bogut also is from Australia. Remember, he was the first pick of the draft in 2005 for the Milwaukee Bucks. And the last point about Australian basketball, the first Australian NBA player was Luke Longley in 1991, where he played with the Minnesota T-Wolves and later on with the NBA champion Chicago Bulls. Thus, Sean, that's my list today of Australian players.
Wait, Luke Longley was the very first Australian to make it to the NBA?
Yes. Yeah, wow. 1991. Yes.
Wow, that's so actually
it wasn't a long time ago, Sean. And so that was the David Stern's as far as vision. The 1992 Olympics in Barcelona was the coming out party of really basketball globally. because that's when it was the first year where our NBA star players played in the Olympics, and they won an average of 46 games. And so Luke Longley was the first Aussie player to play in the NBA.
That surprises me because 91 wasn't all that long ago, and now look at the talent being produced by the continent and country down in Australia. Wild stuff, man. Basketball constantly on the move, as is Gordy Chiesa. Gordy, I always appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Sean. Peace out.
Gordy Chiesa is absolutely the man. We rely on his expertise a couple times a week here on the Sean O'Connell Show for all things hoop. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with this week. It's probably because Alonzo and James and I were on a text thread about this when that graphic came out with Joel Embiid, and people were making it even worse. They were memeing Joel Embiid. We're going to do a little Joel Embiid's career by the numbers. And when I'm talking about by the numbers, how many games he's played, how many games he's missed, and how much he has been paid. I promise that any one of us would trade our jobs, trade our careers to make the same kind of money that guy is making for each individual game that he actually plays. We'll get to that. We'll finish the hour with that. Some Joel Embiid by the numbers. Coming up next on the Sean O'Connell Show, 3 minutes from now, do the Kansas City Chiefs actually have an advantage because of the way games are officiated, because of the referees? And if they do, how big a problem is that for the National Football League? We'll get into all of it next on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Sean O'Connell Show continues here on ESPN 792.1 FM. One thing that's, if you're paying attention to the Senior Bowl practices, we're going to talk more about it tomorrow. We're going to talk about the Combine a lot on this show, Utah Pro Days, Utah workouts. It's a different landscape than we're accustomed to. As you're looking at the pro scouting prospects for Junior Tafuna and Karene Reed, we're going to get into this in hour number 3. Like, they're impressing people right now at the pro day, at the Reese's Senior Bowl practices. They started on Tuesday, and already you're getting a bunch of the insiders shouting out the Utah guys. So we'll dive deeper into that about, 25 minutes from now. But I wanted to take an opportunity to further discuss the NFC and AFC championship games that already played out. You know, you have an extra week between those games and the Super Bowl to really kind of fill and figure out what's going on in the NFL. I already told you how I feel about the extra conversation around Patrick Mahomes and the officiating done to sort of protect Patrick Mahomes. There is apparently some idea, some plan to address consistency in officiating that's not wholly unrelated to the way that things are adjudicated with Patrick Mahomes versus the rest of the league. And this is where the NFL needs to be really, really careful. Because I have long told you that one of the things I despise is when an NBA release comes out or an NFL release comes out after the fact, after a controversial call, after a game-deciding situation, whatever, after something important happens, and they say, oh, actually, we got that wrong. That thing that we were going to do, that was not the right way to handle it.
Shoot. And
sorry,
it's like,
guys.
Great, we can't do anything about it now.
Sorry, guys. You're right, though. You're right to be upset. And you're like, okay, so are you going to suspend those referees and not let them do it again? No.
We're going to replay the game from that point or something.
That's
what they'll do. Like in NBA and other leagues, when you protest and you win a protest for a call, they'll replay from that point. That you can't necessarily do that with football. Too much collisions in football to be doing that. But yeah, like, are you gonna be able to do anything about it? Oh no, we just wanted to tell you we know we're wrong. Okay, great.
It's like, cool, thank you. So the
cool
NFL
story.
The NFL has to be really, really careful in addressing whatever this is and deciding whether or not to be like fully transparent with how they evaluate. Hey, you know what? The Chiefs are getting more calls than everyone else. You got to be really, really careful because the narrative already exists, and as a league, as a product, you can kind of just like scoff at it. Your official stance, even while you do the top secret work in the back and you evaluate whether or not Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and the Chiefs are getting more favorable calls on average than other teams are, however you would evaluate that on the tape, you can't go public with something like that. You can't come out and say we're going to rectify it because all of you are right. Because then everybody's up in arms, especially Buffalo's Bills fans, especially AFC opponents who are just like, okay, so now you're allowing them to chase a three-peat, and maybe by that point, because obviously this isn't going to be a change that is made in the next 2 weeks, right? So let's say that, I don't know, sometime in March, the NFL is just like, we're doing this now because we looked at the tape, and just like those stupid releases you get after a game, that flag should have been picked up, or that first down should have been a first down, or that call should not have been a call. Patrick Mahomes was abusing the slide.
Or when Lamar Jackson was totally destroyed out of bounds in the Bills game. That probably should have been a flag. Great.
Yes.
And it would have been with Mahomes if it happened with Mahomes.
Correct, yeah. Right? even if they come out with that, James. And that's honestly, that's probably the place where the admission would come. It wouldn't be on like, we spotted the ball wrong for a team that was playing against the Chiefs. It would be something like that. Like, so Patrick Mahomes drew a flag on this slide, and it shouldn't have been. Or, hey, like this here, this Lamar hit absolutely should have been penalized. That absolutely should have been a flag.
But he started the tackle with the jersey pull when he was still in bounds, OC.
Yes, 17 seconds ago, he was pulling on Lamar's jersey in bounds, and so now, anyway, the NFL's just got to be really, really careful. This is dicey territory, and I know that the $25 billion a year business is kind of above reproach. They're kind of bulletproof. But this is one of those things that all the fans that are like, I'm not watching anymore because of the anthem stuff. You were lying. You still watch, right? I'm not watching anymore because the game's too soft, the targeting rules. You were lying. You're still watching. The NFL saying, hey, like we actually have been too easy on the Chiefs. If they go on to win 3 straight Super Bowls, that's going to be something that fans are just like, oh, yeah, so you are rigging the games in favor of certain franchises.
Pro wrestling, great.
There's already plenty of conspiracy theorists out there. There's already plenty of people who feel like this thing is all stacked in the favor of certain franchises, certain media markets, whatever. I'm that way when it comes to the NBA draft. I'm that way when it comes to the Utah Jazz and they're tanking the run towards the bottom. Right now, they're second highest odds to have the number 1 overall pick in the upcoming NBA draft. I really don't think that the NBA is going to let Utah have the number 1 pick. I just don't see it happening. And the purists out there are just like, dude, they don't control anything. It's ping pong balls. They can't. It's fully random. Oh, really?
Yeah, my only thing with that is why did they let the Minnesota Timberwolves have it twice then?
Because the Minneapolis is a larger media market than Salt Lake City.
Yeah, okay. There's things like that they don't necessarily have the storied history that would say, hey, yeah, we would like them to win, but I guess you're right. The media market.
And this might be this probably is some like deeply rooted insecurity of people don't take Salt Lake City seriously. They don't take Utah seriously. And despite the efforts of especially a lot of the entrepreneurs around here, the Miller family and what Ryan Smith is doing right now, like despite all these efforts, we're still viewed as a flyover state and a kind of a backwater by a lot of people. I am simultaneously relieved by that because it keeps us from getting overcrowded, but also bothered by that because this is one of the greatest places you could live in the United States of America.
You want respect from people who don't live here, but you also don't want that many of them to live here.
I don't want them to come here. I just want them to acknowledge that this is a great place. So it probably is rooted in that whole situation. But also there is like, if there is a persona non grata, if there is a market non grata in the NBA circle, and the NBA, we know what the NBA is, how it leans politically. We know how the NBA leans culturally, ethno-demographically, right? If there is an outlier, an extreme outlier, I mean, it's us. Yeah. It's Salt Lake City. Now, there's an easy way, or there is not an easy way, but there's a way that you can combat that and that you can start to, like, even that out, and it would be by, like, nudging along the success of a market here and making it seem like a cooler place to live and a better place to, build an NBA basketball career.
But then more people would move here and we'd be upset. So
I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. You're poking holes in my argument. I appreciate that, and it's probably your job.
I'm playing off the bit where you want, and I think most Utahns, if not all native Utahns, feel the same way. I do it at a lot of levels too. I'm like, I want people to acknowledge that we are a bigger and better place than our reputation is here. But I also am like, we have enough people here.
We have more than enough.
I'm a little concerned about water and stuff, so we're probably okay.
Especially being from St. George, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, so we probably shouldn't have that many more people live here, that kind of stuff.
All right, so the conclusion that we have come to somehow started with the Super Bowl, and the conclusion we have come to now is that we don't actually want the Utah Jazz to win the number 1 overall draft pick. Except it's going to be Cooper Flagg, and Cooper Flagg is like, I mean, there's nothing is altered on the Utah landscape if Cooper Flagg is your number 1 overall pick.
It's
if
true.
You know what I'm saying.
It's true.
You know what I mean? Like if Dylan Harper comes here and loves it here, which he very likely would, and starts telling all of the other young players around the circuit, just like, dude, There's a reason the number 1 overall recruit in college basketball came to a school here. I love it here. This place is like a hidden gem. It's amazing. Now you got, I don't know, like 7 more people moving to Utah.
7 more. Yeah.
And we don't want that.
Yeah. Stay away. Oh man. Yeah, no, it's a tough little internal struggle we have, isn't it, OC?
It is, and the respect factor for all Utah franchises, all Utah programs is on some level affected by my conversation, the narrative that we perpetuate in the media. So I should be more responsible about this because in reality, like, whether or not there's any conspiracy against a team like the Utah Jazz getting a number 1 overall draft pick, there probably is not any real evidence to support that. It's, I'm sure, just my tinfoil hat sort of idea. The reality of the matter, the fact of the matter is that, like, BYU basketball is very much on the map right now with the elite players, no matter where they're from. Utah football is very much on the map, and now BYU football alongside them. But Utah football was there first and for longer on the national map from a respect standpoint and from a, like, we can get guys from anywhere standpoint. Now, you're still not going to get the same guys that Oregon and USC want, right? You're not going to beat them for 5-star recruits, but you're getting guys out of those same high schools. You're getting guys out of South Florida. You're getting guys out of Louisiana. You're getting guys out of Texas. You're getting guys from places you didn't used to get guys from. And so that insecurity that I somehow landed on for whatever reason in this segment is largely unwarranted when you actually look at what sports here have been able to do. The NHL, there was never really any concern about the NHL because, first of all, we didn't have to worry about it for very long because that whole thing came together so rapidly. And the personality of most NHL players, like, a lot of these guys, more than half the league is from Canada. So Salt Lake City would be like the 4th biggest city in Canada. There's not, you don't combat that whole just like, I need more of like a downtown, more of a nightlife, more of a, like, that kind of vibe. You don't need, like, in hockey, it's like a bunch of dudes from Finland and Canada. They're just like, this place is crazy. Look at all these look at all these malls.
Or they're like, kind of feels like home in some ways.
Right.
Like, I remember when the Vancouver Whitecaps MLS had to play their home games, a good chunk of their home games here in Sandy at I think it was still Rio Tinto Stadium back then, now America First Field. And their social media team took a picture of the Wasatch Front and went, it kind of feels like home. They were the Whitecaps. Well, we got Whitecaps here too. So I'm sure it's a similar feeling for a lot of the Utah Hockey Club players from those places.
Well, in any case, again, we took the most circuitous route possible in this segment to get to this point. But this has become and is becoming even more so, seemingly by like the year, maybe by the month, a big-time sports market. The thing that we're never going to get is the thing I wanted to talk about this segment. You're probably never going to get an NFL team. You're probably never going to get an NFL franchise. You're going to have a hard time even getting the guys that leave here to be NFL stars to come back, like the Alex Smith type individuals. It's just like there's not the same prospect on the football front professionally here in Utah. Maybe if one of the alternative leagues can really get some footing, one of the spring professional leagues, I guess the UFL is what it's called now.
Bring back the Stallions.
At least bring back their gear.
Yeah.
At least bring back the merchandise from the Stallions.
Full steed ahead.
There has to be.
Shout out to our guy Brian Brown, by the way.
There has to be somewhere like a shipping container full of Salt Lake Stallions starter jackets and hats.
Speaking of Brian Brown, I'm going to have to text him because he might know if there's a place like that because he worked for the Stallions when they were in their short run here.
Yeah, that shipping container full of Stallions merch is probably next to the shipping container full of Utah Yeti jerseys or Utah
that may never get unveiled,
or Utah Mammoth sweaters or whatever we end up calling this thing, because I'm fully on board with it not being the Yeti, right? I obsessed over that before I got this job. I obsessed over that way too much. Hopefully, by the end of the season, I would prefer for there to be something even before then. But the general sentiment is that they're not going to go into the upcoming NHL draft and draft under Utah Hockey Club. So be glad that you got your sweaters now, and be glad you got your hats and your jackets, and go load up on all those things, because at some point that's going to be the throwback look. I still believe that. Anyway, plenty left to get to on the Sean O'Connell Show. Joel Embiid. We talked about this. Joel Embiid, by the numbers. How many games has he played? How many games has he missed? I'm going to tell you how much this man has been paid for each of the games he's played, and you're probably going to throw up wherever you're sitting. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. O'Connell Show, ESPN 792.1 FM. I told you, I'm actually going to deliver on a tease for once. I told you we were going to get to this because it's one of these fascinating, insane numbers that happens occasionally in an athlete's career that just demands that we talk about it because we only have about 5 minutes before Tyson Ewing joins us. All right. James Peterson. You and me and Alonzo were on a text thread. I guess this was yesterday, day before, whenever. And we were talking about the graphic that got abused on the 76ers broadcast where they pulled up a little graphic on Joel Embiid as he's sitting on the bench. Games played.
Street clothes. Yeah.
In street clothes. Games played and games missed. And they memified this thing, right? And people exaggerated how many games he's played and how many he's missed. I think the worst one I saw was like 100 games plays, 500 games missed.
Yeah.
The real number for Joel Embiid.
It fooled you for a second.
You're
like, wait, that can't be right.
I was like, that can't be real. But you never know because I don't pay super close attention to Joel Embiid's career. And the Utah Jazz, thankfully, have not had in recent memory someone who's this injury prone, right? Like, yes, guys who've been banged up, and that's just part of professional athletics and basketball in general.
They've done their share of load management in the Will Hardy era these last 3 years, too, but nothing like Joel Embiid.
Thank goodness Walker Kessler is getting those rest days at 23 years of age or whatever. But Joel Embiid, the real number for Joel Embiid is 446 games played, 400 games missed in his NBA career. And
basically half and half.
And I asked Gordy Chiesa about this, like, where's the point of diminishing returns? I know he's a great player. Like, he is an unbelievable player. He is a unique animal when it comes to the ability of someone that big to still have range on the shot, all that stuff, right? He's a defensive problem. He's a matchup problem.
He's got the Hakeem Olajuwon footwork thing going, too.
He's just not available enough. And, you know, there's that whole, like, the whole trust the process situation, and just Joel Embiid, at one time a man of the people in Philadelphia, beloved by the fan base. And we experienced this in Utah. We experienced this with Utah football. You just can't help but sour on somebody when they're unavailable, even if it's something beyond their own control. And I'm not trying to blame Joel Embiid for this. Injury prone is injury prone. There's just nothing you can do about it, especially when you're that size. I can't imagine how difficult it is to keep the joints healthy. But 446 games played, 400 games missed is like one of the bigger what-ifs in NBA history. Like, what could he have been had he been able to stay on the floor? He's only 30 years old, but he's not going to play till he's 40 at this rate. Like, and if he does, he's only going to play another 200 games in the next 10 years.
Especially if he's going to still try to play in the Olympics like he has, like, and add a little bit more wear and tear in the offseason every 4 years. Like, this is, yeah. I've gotten to the point where I wouldn't want Joel Embiid on my favorite team just because of this. Like, he will be awesome in the regular season, so he doesn't get known as that guy that could never play. But maybe he does the 6-man thing that Bill Walton did with the 86 Celtics and has kind of a renaissance as a guy you can rely on for a few minutes at a time. But beyond that, I don't know if he can be relied upon to be a key player on your team.
I don't think he can.
A championship team, that is.
And by the way, he's way expensive. He's too costly for how much production you get out of him. So 400 games missed, 440 odd games played. He's made $266 roughly $1 million in his NBA career. Now,
that's bananas.
I'm not asking you to do that math in your head. I'm going to tell you, and you tell me if you would like this job. For the games he's actually played, if you break it down to games he's actually played in, Joel Embiid has made $596,000 per game that he's actually played.
Yeah.
That's
sign me up.
$600,000 per each individual NBA game. Like,
and if you because it's guaranteed money, if you divide, you could divide that in half, and that's how much he gets paid for the games he's missed.
$265 million to be available 52% of the time. Yes, please sign me up any day.
Sign me up. It's just unfortunate, though. He's too good a player to have this be his legacy. But, injury prone is injury prone.
Again, I'm not blaming Joel Embiid for this. It's just it is what it is at this point. Thought we'd have a little fun with that number. Woo! $600,000 to be sometimes available. Plenty more to get to on the Sean O'Connell Show. We'll check in with Utah women's basketball. Tyson Ewing, the voice of Utah women's basketball, joins us next on ESPN 700. ESPN 792.1 FM. Let's talk a little hoop. Utah women's basketball in action again tomorrow night. This is a team that's playing some pretty good basketball, getting back to full strength with Kennedy McQueen reintegrating herself into the lineup. The voice of Utah women's basketball, Tyson Ewing, who we play an inordinate amount of highlights from, by the way, because he's really good at the job. He joins me now to talk a little hoop. Tyson, welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. How are you?
I'm wonderful, Sean. How are you?
Doing awesome. We're a little inside pool here. Tyson and I were just chatting off air before the segment started, and he revealed something hilarious to me that I decided we needed to bring to air. Now, to set the stage a little bit, the sports information department at the University of Utah, strong partners of ours here on ESPN 700, they are wonderful about giving us access to coaches, to players, and they help us to hopefully deliver a decent show to all of you out there listening. And in the effort of doing so, I guess it was sometime last week, they gave us Gianna Neepkins, who has emerged really as the number one player on this Utah women's basketball team. And Tyson said, she might have been feeling a little bit rushed because, well, Tyson, you tell the folks why I was just frustrating the hell out of Gianna Neepkins silently because I was keeping her on way longer than she needed to be. Go ahead.
Well, to kind of set the stage a little bit, we had just played Baylor the day before, and you were interviewing her, specifically talking about that game at some portion throughout the interview. Well, it was the next day, and when first time for me to understand this travel schedule and how it goes in the Big 12, we were getting ready to, at the exact same time that you were interviewing her, getting ready to board the bus to head down to Fort Worth to prepare for TCU. So that was kind of the off day. Well, literally as you were talking to her on the phone, we had just wrapped up lunch, and players were getting ready to board the bus. And everybody's kind of just waiting, and we see that there's one player on a telephone call. And I'm told by the sports information team that she's actually interviewing with ESPN 700. So everybody's on the bus waiting to leave for Fort Worth, and Gianna's kind of off in the distance in the parking lot, just chatting away. So I end up turning on the application on the ESPN 700 app. Probably about 6 or 7 different players with some coaches were all just listening in on her answers and kind of just staring at her and waiting for her to board the bus to head to Fort Worth. So if there was any rush, that was the reason why. It's because everybody was kind of pressuring her just a little bit.
Oh, Gianna, there's nothing more annoying than when you're trying to do something else and you're on a phone call that may or may not be deemed important, right? When you have to do something else, when you have to go somewhere, when you're like ready to board a plane, or you're the person in the room with you is trying to get your attention and you're on a phone call that you have to pay attention to. So, Gianna, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the show. If that was the case, she hid it from us. So very gracious in her time. We had Maddie Wilkie on earlier this week, and she was incredible as well, coming off a big win against BYU. And up next, it will be the Arizona Wildcats. So it's the last two for these women, as you are well aware, having called these games. Win over Kansas, win over BYU, and I already alluded to this when I was introducing you. Kennedy McQueen is back in the lineup. Now they're kind of slowly breaking her in, which of course is probably the right way to do it, but the addition of a player of that caliber, when you're already playing some pretty good basketball, what can it mean for Gavin Peterson and his squad?
Oh, specifically for this team, what we've noticed is ever since she went out of the lineup, first quarters have been hard to come by. And Gavin will flat out tell you the same exact thing, that starting games has not been good for Utah. And ironically, it's the same exact amount of time that Kennedy has been out. Sure, she came in and played some stints in the first quarter of the BYU game, but before that, still a lot of issues. To kind of put it into perspective, the last 6 first quarters, 35 turnovers over the last 6 first quarters. So that averages about 5.5, about 5.8, the technical number. So almost 6 turnovers per first quarter. So clearly showing that the offense is out of rhythm without a player of Kennedy McQueen's status. And so she, in that regard, kind of shows her worth of the importance of having her in the lineup and how the team can get going early on. So I think incorporating her slowly back is so very valuable to the offense. So that's one thing. On the defensive end, Kennedy McQueen is the type of player that will guard the best offensive player on the opposing team. She is a tremendous defender and one that, again, like I said, she guards that best player, but she disrupts so very well. And so being able to get her back is monumental for Utah. While, they have been performing well over the last 2 games, they had lost 3 of their previous 4 games, obviously without Kennedy. And so getting some rhythm, winning against Kansas, beating BYU on the road, obviously is great to see as their schedule kind of, dare I say, got a little easier. But now that they've had the experience without her, getting her back is going to be so incredibly important down the stretch here. And while she was on the floor, you can never guess that there was an injury of the magnitude that it appeared to be that day in Ames. But, she has healed so very well. You got to credit the University of Utah medical staff for how well they've gotten her back to where she is now. And then credit what Kennedy is doing as well. She so badly wants to get back out there because she didn't want to end her career the way that we were fearing she might end her career. So my long-winded answer is, my goodness, it's going to be so great to have her back for so many reasons.
I might be beating this to death, but I'm very fascinated with the idea that Gavin Peterson had to take over while the season was already going and had to find some type of seamless transition, which, of course, having an incumbent assistant take over the head job is going to be more seamless than bringing in a new personality. But just the way that every player I talk to, every person in that athletic department, everyone around that team, when I ask about, hey, how has this been managed? And when I talk to Coach himself, like it's almost understated the way that they've just picked up where, Lynn Roberts left off. I don't think that's as easy as maybe it looks. And the players have been talking about, well, yeah, but we knew it had to be him, and he's already put in the work. And so it didn't feel like this huge, monumental, ground-shaking change for us. And you've been right there watching it happen. I don't – correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the season is going any differently if it's Lynn Roberts than what Gavin Peterson has been able to do. And I'm incredibly impressed by that.
I would agree with you. I really feel that the team has bought in, especially like you stated. It was extremely rare for anything like this to happen, but that kind of goes along with the fact that the WNBA plays during the summer when there's no college basketball season played. And so when you go to the college basketball game and, pick a coach to come and coach your team, you have to take them away from the middle of their season. And so it was obviously a first for us, something that I'd never seen before. But as far as the transition goes, to your point, I would have never have known that this was a change at all. It feels as though everything is the exact same. If I have to give any type of behind the scenes of what might be different, it just kind of feels like maybe it's a little bit more loose, but that's about it. Like, that's really the only change that has, and it's very minor because it just doesn't feel like anything has altered much. Really goes to show the relationship, in my opinion, that Gavin had with Lynn, that they were 100% on the same page when they were coaching together. And, doing that for 12 years the way that they did, of course you're going to be. But now having to be put in a situation where you're going to have to prove it, it shows to me that that's 100% what they did. And they are now being able to take what he is able to take what he learned from Lynn and so seamlessly incorporate it into this team now, into his team now. I've, to your point, been so extremely impressed with how smooth the transition has gone.
Tyson Ewing, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, the voice of Utah women's basketball. Up next for them, a game against the Arizona Wildcats at the Huntsman Center. This is a Power in Pink game, so you're supposed to wear pink if you're out there supporting your running Utes. Does that mean you're going to be wearing pink on the broadcast desk?
That is a good question. While I obviously don't have any camera time, the camera does tend to go past me when it's on ESPN Plus. In this case, it's going to be on FS1 because Gavin stands, right in front of where we stand, and so frequently we have to look around, and obviously the camera will pan to Gavin every so often. But in years past, I don't own anything pink other than a tie.
Okay,
so in years past, it's been a
I was about to yell at you.
Shirt and a tie.
If you were going to say you don't even own a pink tie, I was going to get mad because that's like a staple for anyone who's wearing a tie ever.
Right. Yeah, so potentially the look of a white shirt and pink tie. We'll see come Friday.
All right. More importantly, this Arizona team, how does Utah match up?
Okay, so these guys played back on New Year's Eve, and Utah ran them off the floor at McKell Center. It was a game that Arizona did not look good at all. Their best player got into foul trouble early, and it really took them off what they wanted to do. Their point guard, Jada Williams, who was one of the brightest stars coming out of high school, Little Bullet was her nickname, has been okay this year. She's not a really consistent shooter, but she's somebody that can attack, get to the rim, and can create for herself and for others. They also, Paulina Paris is another player that has been a problem as of late. She didn't do much that game against Utah last time. So dare I say the game plan against Arizona was performed to perfection on the defensive end. I don't anticipate that Arizona will play that same exact way coming into the Huntsman Center on Friday. You got to believe that Adia Barnes is going to change things up a little bit. So a player to look out for, Brea Cunningham, 6'4" sophomore. She's kind of the do-everything type player. She's a big five-star athlete from 2023, number 14 in the country back then. She's their best player. She's going to be somebody that could be problematic. If Utah can similarly try to get her into foul trouble, get her off the floor early, that's going to be something that they want to do. But I would say that they match up really well with this team. Arizona is a team that can pressure, and Utah has struggled with pressure in games past and years past, turned the basketball over, obviously, like I talked about a moment ago, especially to start games, a total of 35 turnovers in the last 6 first quarters. So they're going to pressure, going to look for quick steals and scores in transition. But I do think Utah does a very good job matching up with this team specifically. I'm not going to come out and say Utah's going to win this game, but I will say it will be a pretty darn good game, and Utah fans will want to come out and see it for sure on Friday.
All right, so when you look at what this team has been doing so far this season, plenty of basketball left to play, but we already made the point about how you get Kennedy McQueen back, and if you can keep everyone else healthy, you're probably rounding into that old adage we use with college basketball, an opportunity to be playing your best basketball at the right time, down the home stretch, getting ready for tournament time. This team really has an opportunity to do something pretty special. They've already won 15 games. They're on the way to win at least 20. I don't think 22 or 23 wins in this regular season is unrealistic. By the numbers, and I'm sure you dive way deeper into this than I do, they're doing everything better than their opponents are on balance for the most part. Where is the spot that you think they need to improve the most if they could win a Big 12 tournament championship, if they're going to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament?
Absolutely. I think a little bit of what I just stated is the fact that Utah, against pressure, that they tend to catch the turnover bug quite frequently, especially in the Big 12. Gavin Peterson came on the air a few weeks ago after a game and stated something along the lines of, the Big 12 is a lot more physical than I think we were ready for. And so they've obviously had to adapt quite a bit. That BYU game showed that, especially, again, to start, they had 9 turnovers in that first quarter, which is not great. But it shows that teams are scouting to pressure Utah guards as quickly as possible. If there's one area of improvement, in my opinion, and I'm sure Gavin would probably reiterate it, it's that they really need to value each possession much better than what they're doing right now. Currently, they only turn the ball over. I mean, I'm staying only with little bunny ears here, about 16 times a game. Yes, they have a good assist-to-turnover ratio, averaging about 19 assists per game, but they still turn the ball over way too much, especially to start games. I know I've already said that 5 million times, but that's really where the game can get out of hand. Against Kansas State a few weeks ago, When they fell behind super early, it's because they turned the ball over and they allowed Kansas State to score. If the team scores after turning the basketball over, then Utah finds themselves down in big holes. BYU, fortunately, did not score very often after they turned the ball over, so they got lucky in that regard. We're only down 6 going into the second quarter, but if they find themselves in these holes, it's going to be a lot more difficult to bury out of them, despite the fact that they have been able to do that, but they need to do much better of valuing each possession specifically to start games throughout the stretch of the rest of the Big 12 season.
I know I've probably asked you this already this season, but when you have somebody on multiple times, you're allowed to shift opinions based on what you've seen. What is the ceiling for this team, this roster, with this coaching change and the consistency that they've still been able to find despite that coaching change? What's the ceiling for Utah women's basketball this year, do you think?
Oh, boy, that's a good question. So I really do think that they sit towards the top of the Big 12 conference. I think they do have a chance. TCU's proven that they're beatable. We obviously saw Kansas State lost to Colorado last week as well. They've proven to be beatable despite the fact Utah never had a chance in that basketball game. So as far as the Big 12 goes, I think Utah does have a very good chance to go into the Big 12 tournament and to potentially get deep, have a deep run in that Big 12 tournament. Not sure exactly what that would look like. Obviously, matchups is a very important aspect of being able to run deep into those types of tournaments. As far as the tournament goes, I mean, obviously they have a little bit of work to do, but there is still, in my opinion, a chance for them if they can win games, win more games, and have a chance to potentially host. This is for sure a Sweet 16 team. Like you stated, they're currently 7th on Charlie Cream's projections for the Big 12 or for the NCAA tournament. If they can win more games, if they can, especially getting Kennedy McQueen back now, then I still believe, like I stated, that they have that chance to host, which we've seen is so valuable in the women's game. So Sweet 16 run, I think, is very much a goal for them. I don't think that's a lofty goal. I think it's something that is attainable for them. So I would say for sure they do have a chance to compete in the Big 12 tournament, specifically go to a semifinal, a final even potential, and then look at a potential of a Sweet 16 as well. I think that is 100% in the realm of possibility for them, no doubt about it.
When you look at the rest of this Big 12, it is a good conference, and as we've talked about with both you and with Gavin Peterson, there is a different style to the basketball.
Yeah.
Who is the biggest threat to the success of Utah?
So since we've already seen them, Kansas State, in my opinion, is the cream of the crop of the Big 12. I think TCU has the ability as well. I think their Big Two in Haley Van Lith and Sedona Prince are obviously incredible players. But Kansas State, in my opinion, has it all. They can score, they can shoot, they can defend, they can get the basketball in the paint with Ayoka Lee. I know she's hurt for a few weeks at least, but that to me is the complete team, especially if they get Ayoka Lee back. I think West Virginia is a very solid team as well, especially their style of play, which is extremely high pressure and forcing teams into the most turnovers in the Big 12. Baylor showed that they can obviously compete as well. So those are Oklahoma State, Iowa State are a couple of teams as well that you can toss in the mix. But if you're giving me that answer, 100% going to say Kansas State is the cream of the crop. I think TCU is behind them, not by a large margin, but I do feel Kansas State is the best team that Utah has played this year and the biggest threat for them, especially when they get healthy towards the end of the year, if they can stay healthy.
Tyson, appreciate your time. Have another great call coming up tomorrow. Always appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
The voice of Utah women's basketball, Tyson Ewing, right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. As he mentioned, that will be a Fox Sports 1 game televised, and you can listen to it, as always, here on your home of the Utes. All right, we've touched on the Senior Bowl a little bit. The Combine is coming up right around the corner. I want to talk about Utah's representation in Mobile, Alabama. I want to talk about this pre-draft process and what it looks like this year for Utah. A lot different than most of us thought it was going to be. But here we are. We'll discuss in 3 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN Radio Network. Show continues here on a Thursday. ESPN 792.1 FM. Proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. A lot going on in the sports world. You got basketball season in full swing, Utah Hockey Club in full swing. You've got, of course, a Super Bowl coming, Pro Bowl, if you care about the Pro Bowl. James Peterson producing today. James, when do you start engaging in the pre-draft process? When do you start turning an eye or an ear towards draft projections, mock drafts, the combine coming up, et cetera, et cetera?
You mean if I didn't work for a sports radio station and we were needed to talk about it for 4 months? That's what you're saying?
Well, even people in sports.
Because the reason I asked that is because before I started working here and in this industry, I hardly paid attention to the pre-draft process at all.
Interesting.
Yeah, it bores me, to be honest with, in a personal level. Now, as far as professional thing,
is that true in basketball as well?
I don't like.
You're
I don't
more
get
of an NBA guy.
I don't get into the NBA part either. I watch the event and then I move on.
James,
I don't like fake sports. James, what I mean by that is I'm not in for preseason for any sport. I'm not much in for. I mean, I'm in
who
for.
hurt you?
I'm in for off season like transactions in that like who did you draft? Who did you get in free agency? What trades happened? But beyond that, like, tell me when the games start.
Oh, hold on. Rewind, though. You said, who did you draft? That's what we're talking about.
But that's who did you draft as in it just happened. Not, hey, let's talk about who could go in the 4th round from the time the Super Bowl's over till the end of April. It bores me.
What? Especially
in football.
I want to know who hurt James Peterson with the pre-draft process.
Yeah. I mean, it requires too much. I need to know a bunch of obscure things about people who may not be very good. And I'm that way personally with recruiting too. I don't care about college recruiting that much. Like, tell me when they're on the field and I'll see how good they are.
That's why I love it, because they're for me, the speculative process of the pre-draft evaluations in football more than basketball for me, but even in basketball, I find the whole thing fascinating.
You like the unknown?
Well, I like the unknown, and I like trying to, for lack of a better term, I like trying to guess. We pretend it's not guesswork, right?
Yeah.
We pretend we're educated about these things. I am less enthusiastic about that with recruiting, like you're talking about, because in recruiting, so much uncertainty. You're talking about dudes, in most cases, who are like a couple of years shy of really growing into their bodies and being what they're going to be as an athlete. Like,
yeah, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, evaluating them as prospects versus 19, 20, 21-year-olds, like 22, 23-year-olds. That's much for projecting them at the next level, much harder and can be cumbersome. Well, like, yeah, from college to pros in any sport, it's a lot easier and can definitely be. I'll tell you, it's more interesting, but I still am like, just tell me when the draft is.
That's okay. I'm fine with your thoughts on that. I'm not that way.
I know that. There's a whole industry. Like, there's insiders pop up every day about draft and whatever sports. So I appreciate the work that gets done, and we certainly, from a professional level, I certainly put as much attention as we need to on those things to make sure we're covering it, because there's so many people that are interested in it. If it were up to me, just for me personally, I'm not that interested.
So the Senior Bowl is this weekend. Senior Bowl practices are happening right now, and for me, because of all the other conversation that's going on in sports and in pro sports right now, this year's Senior Bowl, I think part of it is because there's not a bunch of like super controversial characters. There's not a deep quarterback class. I think that's a problem for this year's pre-draft evaluation speak. You're not getting a ton of reporting out of the Senior Bowl, like not as much as typically you would.
It used to be such a huge event for the pre-draft process. It feels like pro days are a bigger deal now, and just
the combine is always going to be
whatever their agents are feeding to the media is a lot bigger deal now than the Senior Bowl.
The underwear Olympics are going to be the number one thing.
Combine, yeah.
And the combine is where a lot of people kind of turn on, right? That's kind of the first thing for a lot of folks. The Senior Bowl for me is a bucket list. I want to get down there. The game itself, whatever. The practices are where it's really at. If you're a member of the media who gets to, have that 4 or 5 days of, you don't have to be on air, and you can go down. They actually let you watch some drills down there. They let you watch practice, which is a thing of the past at Utah. It's not as prevalent at BYU as it used to be, and it will go away at BYU pretty dang soon, by the way. That's how it works for all of you who are uneducated. The better a team gets, the more success they have, the less access they have to give the media. So I think Kalani Sitake and Jay Hill and those guys have this thing humming down at BYU, and the more games they continue to win, the less they're going to feel it's necessary to open any portion of practice. And that's just the way it works everywhere, all right? Not at the NFL level, at the college football level. So you don't get to watch practices anymore. I would love to get down to the Senior Bowl and watch practices, watch these one-on-one pass rush especially, but watch some of the drills, watch some of the performances. And I wanted to get into what the Senior Bowl is this year, what the pre-draft process is this year for the in-state guys, and also what it is not, because unfortunately what it is not is the more relevant thing, especially looking at it through the Utah lens here on the home of the Utes at ESPN 700. If I had told you back in July that Brant Keithy was not going to be part of the Senior Bowl festivities, that Cam Rising was not going to be part of the Senior Bowl festivities, that the pre-draft evaluation process was again going to have to exclude those guys mostly because of an injury situation, you would have tuned out, you would have gone to Tahiti, and you would have ignored the college football season altogether probably. And it would have resulted in a lot less heartache than you experienced this year watching Utah football. As it stands, I'm looking at the official Senior Bowl rosters according to the Reese's Senior Bowl website, and Karene Reed's the guy there for Utah. Now, I know Junior Tafuna also got invited. I think somebody else opted out and was not able to show up. So Karene Reed was the guy who was like always going to be there, and Junior Tafuna has joined him. But this was a Utah football team that was supposed to have not only an elite presence in the season, but in this postseason pre-draft process, we were going to be talking about, I thought Lander Barton would be foregoing his senior year because he played so damn well. I thought that he'd be down there as an underclassman participating in the Senior Bowl. Jim Nagy, who is the chairman of this thing, I've spoken to him personally. He loves Lander Barton, and Lander Barton would have been like the first invite had he decided that he was going to go to the draft. Good thing for Utah that you get him for another year, although it wasn't a great thing for Utah in the 2024 season. I don't need to get into that. But Karene Reed, Junior Tafuna, representing at the University of Utah, I don't know where people feel the importance of a draft pipeline, an NFL pipeline is in terms of success on the recruiting front and, of course, on the actual gameplay front for your team, for the Utes, for BYU, for Utah State, for whoever it is you cheer for. For James Peterson's Ohio State Buckeyes, I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg. That's an NFL pipeline that is well established, that is never going to go away, that continues to feed itself. At Utah, that has been something that was far from guaranteed 20 years ago and has gradually and continuously gotten better and stronger and better and stronger. And the reputation of Utah players when they go down to a Senior Bowl event has sort of perpetuated itself. And, of course, success begets more success. Parents and recruits and high school coaches and all these people see what's going on and see the way that Utah football players are being talked about by pro scouts at the Senior Bowl and at the Combine and obviously in the draft process. They see the way and listen to the way NFL coaches when they're evaluating that draft class and they do that press conference thing and they say like, oh yeah, we got Devin Lloyd out of Utah. We're really excited about this guy. None of this happens in a vacuum. People get excited about this, and if you already have that letter in your mailbox from the University of Utah, then you connect those dots, and you're just like, okay, that's a school that was kind of on the low-key side, but look at how many guys they've got on NFL rosters, and look at the way these guys are talked about in this Senior Bowl process, and look at the standout players mentioned in this article. And right now, for Utah, I think Karene Reed's going to have – reports are that he's having a great week of practice. I think he's going to have, with full participation, a great game. Karene Reed is not the guy that you would have penciled in as a Utah football fan as the most impressive pro prospect on this Utah football roster, but he's sort of carrying the torch down there in Mobile, Alabama.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same thing as, what was it, preseason or after the first couple weeks of the season, PFF had Karene as the number 6 rated linebacker in all of college football, and I was a bit taken aback at that, not because I didn't realize how good Karene Reed was, but just that compared to the rest of the nation, I didn't realize that people saw him that way. And he's going to get that in the draft evaluation too. People are going to go nationally. People might be taken aback a little bit, like, hey, this Karene Reed kid is actually a really good linebacker. We could see him instead of a 4th, 5th, 6th round pick, we could see him go off the board earlier because he's had such a good evaluation. Like that, this is the beginning of that for Karene Reed. But I remember being taken aback that that's the way that experts saw Karene nationally, was a top 10 linebacker in all of college football in the nation. And now it seems like this is another chance for fans nationally to see, hey, yeah, people think very highly of Karene Reed.
The trepidation I have for Karene Reed is he is a better football player than he is physical specimen.
It's true. And maybe that's why for me and maybe others here locally and in other places we're kind of surprised that he would be rated top 10, almost top 5 in the country as a linebacker.
Well, and there's going to be a full picture after the combine, after pro days. I'll tell you what's going to happen with Karene Reed, all right? Karene Reed, it's Thursday of Senior Bowl week. Karene Reed, again, staying fully healthy, is going to be a guy that you'll see the articles written. You know who's really flashing in coverage and in run fits? Karene Reed. Guy who's always in the right spot. Guy who's incredible with his communication, making sure everyone else is dialed in. Karene Reed's a great leader, right? We saw how that affected Utah's defense this year, both when he was on the field and when he was injured and he was off the field. Like, Karene Reed's absence was felt, and his presence was obvious. You're going to get those reports out of the Senior Bowl. You're getting those reports, if you dive deep enough, out of Senior Bowl practices. And then you're going to wait and see what his numbers look like at the Combine and what his numbers look like at a pro day. And that's going to tell you whether or not Karene Reed is going to jump off a draft board before you thought, or if Karene Reed is going to be a 6th, 7th round guy. Like Cole Bishop last year was the dude that everyone was talking about. All the folks that had seen him practice at the Senior Bowl, all the folks that had watched his tape and were aware of him were like, how is Cole Bishop not higher on draft boards? And then he went and he ran an incredible 40 time, a much better 40 time than people had him projected to run. Cole Bishop performed the physicality side of things, right? The athleticism test. He performed better in that than anyone gave him credit for, and his draft position reflected that. Karene Reed is in that spot right now where people know he's a good football player. Nobody knows how good of an athlete Karene Reed is.
And are you saying that his numbers might not be quite as good because he is probably a better football player than he is an athlete, and that that might prevent him from going as early as people around here probably think he should?
I think his skill as a football player warrants a higher draft pick than the numbers he's going to turn in. Yeah. Now, I don't.
Maybe the scouts and GMs will value his skill as a football player more than the numbers, but we've seen so often that the numbers seem to take precedent.
The numbers take precedent. I mean, the best example of this for the Utah football fans out there, the very best example of a guy who was an unreal college football player but was limited from a physical athleticism standpoint, Gianni Paul should have been probably the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year. DeForest Buckner ended up winning it that year because he had gaudy numbers from a defensive lineman perspective and obviously looked the part. I mean, do you know what DeForest Buckner looks like when he gets off the bus? Yeah. He's the reason that guys just stop playing football.
Former Niner, right?
Yes.
DeForest
and then,
Buckner.
yeah, with the Colts now, right?
Yeah. That's
Defoe is so scary. He's gigantic. You could have made a pretty strong case that Gianni Paul had as good of a season statistically as DeForest Buckner did as a linebacker. He did everything at the linebacker position, and he was playing alongside a great running mate in Jared Norris. But from an actual who's the better player standpoint, Gianni Paul was a better player than Jared Norris. And I love Jared Norris. Jared Norris got more time in the NFL because he's a better athlete, because his numbers are better. His measurables were better. Gianni Paul had a disastrous pre-draft process. He ran like a 5-flat 40. Now, I don't think Gianni Paul ever flashed on tape because you watched him run a slot receiver down from behind.
No.
Right? That's not why he's a good football player. He was just a great football player. He knew how to study tape. He knew how to put himself in the right position. He didn't miss tackles. He had a nose for the ball. He was always either the first guy to the ball or the second guy to the ball that caught the tipped pass for the interception or was there to recover the fumble if he wasn't there to be the guy to cause the fumble. Him and Jared Norris were great running mates specifically because of that. They were either first guy to the ball or second guy to the ball almost all the time, almost on every play. So that's the category I fear Karene Reed might fall into. Karene Reed is going to be talked about at the Senior Bowl and coming out of Senior Bowl practices as just like, this kid is a player. That guy is a football player. And then you're going to have to hold your breath if you're the Reed family, if you're a Utah fan, that when it comes time to get in your underpants and do some bench presses and jump a vertical and a broad jump and run a 40 and do the short shuttle, that you can be as impressive in that as you were playing football.
And specifically, like you said, at the combine, because he could have a so-so day at the combine or worse and really make up for it in the same drills at the pro day, but that's not going to be as valuable as it would have been at the combine. So specifically, combine's huge. We all know that for that. Yes, you get a second chance at the pro day, but you really should give at least a decent to solid showing at the combine before scouts and GMs say, "Oh yeah, look at how he improved him at the pro day." So it'd be a big deal for Karene Reed as it is for everybody.
Okay, I love that we just spent 10 minutes talking about Karene Reed, but again, one of the points that have to be made here is that the bad luck, the injury, the misfortune with injury means we're not talking about Cam Rising being
true
a pro prospect right now. We're not talking about Brant Keithy, who would have been talked about as kind of an interesting tweener. He
might have been the top Ute taken in this class if he doesn't get hurt, if Cam doesn't get hurt, more importantly, because he would have been featured much more with Cam at quarterback.
Junior Tafuna got injured this year, and so I wonder what he's going to have to do at the Senior Bowl to impress people and at workouts to impress people, because that position, that interior defensive line position, has changed somewhat. You can't just be a two-gap run stopper. They want you to have some interior pass rush moves. We've seen that at times from Junior Tafuna. So I'm very, very curious to know what kind of conversation comes out and continues with him in this pre-draft process. But we're talking about two guys, James, in a roster that preseason we were just like, this might be the deepest Utah football team ever.
Yeah.
And it just didn't play out that way. And it's a stark reminder when you're looking at this pre-draft process of just how unfortunate Utah football got, because it was supposed to be 4, 5, 6 guys. And before we take a break, I want to make another point that even though for Utah it isn't the strongest, and actually BYU not a lot of representation either, because most of BYU's best players were underclassmen this year, and a lot of those guys are returning, and the guys who had options, like Jack Kelly, have decided to come back to BYU. So you keep going down the layers. All right, well, Utah, not a ton of representation there. BYU, who you love to hate, not a lot of representation there. What about Utah State? Again, still not a ton. And then you remember that there's actually some guys who were elite college football players this year who played their prep football, who were high school players in the state of Utah. And Jackson Dart is a guy whose name is in every single Senior Bowl article and is going to be in every single pre-draft process article, because there is no obvious number 3 quarterback in this draft. Everyone says it's either Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward at number 1, either Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward at number 2, and then there's any assortment of number 3 propositions. And the big question mark about the former Corner Canyon product is, can he play himself into that conversation? He's got 10,000 yards and like 80 touchdowns in his college football career. He's got some big numbers at big-time schools.
And he can run a little bit, too.
He's a good athlete.
They didn't run him that much at Ole Miss, but he can run a little bit.
And then, so he's a guy that you have to pay attention to. And how about the pride of Kearns High School, Jeff Bassa, who was part of unbelievably dominant Oregon defenses in 2 of his 5 years at the University of Oregon. Or did he play 6 because of the COVID year? In any case, went from Kearns High School to Oregon as a safety, converted to a linebacker. And the question about Jeff Bassa is not, can he run? It's not, can he tackle? It's not even, can he cover? It's, can he take on blocks? That's what Jeffrey Bassa's job is at the Senior Bowl, to go down there and against elite offensive line competition in the country, he has to show the coaches and the evaluators down there that when a pulling guard is coming through the hole, he's able to take on that block, shed that block, and make a tackle, or at least take on that block and stonewall it to where there's a pileup and the running back has to react to the lineman stopping. That's the question for Jeffrey Bassa, which, of course, is going to be the question for a lot of the more undersized linebackers. You could probably ask that same question about Corene Reed. But this process that James refuses to engage in because he's bored by it is where it starts to get really fascinating for me. And I wish we could be down there broadcasting live from the humid confines of Mobile, Alabama, and the Reese's Senior Bowl practices, James.
Hey, I'd go down there for the free Reese's. Love Reese's.
I've been told that the Reese's branding at the Senior Bowl practices and at the Senior Bowl hotels and all that stuff, that they really overdo it. That like every available Reese's product on the market is there in abundance.
Okay, I'm going to see you later. I'm headed to Mobile right now. We'll see.
How sick would we end up eating ourselves on like Reese's Puffs cereal?
Oh my gosh.
On the Reese's, every shape of Reese's. Of course, at the Senior Bowl they have their own special edition Reese's peanut butter cups, the shaped ones like a football. I mean, come on.
My favorite candy is Reese's, so I would be in heaven. I'd probably get sick, though. You're right.
We would be completely unprofessional, just like, oh, sorry, I'm not feeling very well.
I got to skip practice today. I ate too many of the Reese's.
All right, lots more to get to on the Sean O'Connell Show, but the pre-draft process, when do you engage in the pre-draft process as a football fan? 877-353-0700 on the Dish Pros text line. You can always tweet at me at RealOCSports. You're listening to ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Proud part of Utah's ESPN Radio Network. All right, final segment of the show on the Sean O'Connell Show is brought to you by Advanced Window Products. AdvancedWindows.com. If you need new windows, go with the local company, local warranty, local installation, local sales. Tell the mayor of Sac Lake City, Nate Orchard, who is the owner and operator of that company, that OC sent you. 801-850-9100. Time to give away some tickets. We've got more Billy Idol tickets. Okay, I've been a little obsessed with this Joel Embiid conversation that's happened over the last couple of days, and we dove into it a little bit on the show today. So if you were listening, you heard me talk about how many career games Joel Embiid has played versus how many career games Joel Embiid has missed. Give me the games missed in Joel Embiid's career. It came up on a graphic while he's sitting there in street clothes on the bench. And then I did the calculation on exactly how much he has been paid over the course of his career. So if you take his games played, his salary divided by the games played, if you can give James Peterson at 877-353-0700, if you can give him the number of how much he is paid per game based on total salary earned divided by games played, you'll get the same 2 Billy Idol tickets and a high five from James Peterson. It's quite a prize. It's an incredible prize. That's the question. That's your trivia question today. Billy Idol tickets. He's coming in September. And we've had a great show today. Much appreciation to everyone who joined us. Huge amount of appreciation to all of you for listening. Gordy Chiesa, who hung out and lent his expertise for the entire hour today. Just an absolute blast. Tyson Ewing, great. Make sure you're listening. The next time Utah women's basketball comes across these airwaves, we are the home of the Utes on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. We're happy to call ourselves that. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700.